information from the occipital lobe projecting back to the frontal lobe. Um, in the frontal lobe, we know that to be the region of executive functioning, higher cortical functioning. Preorbital, if the optic nerve is right here, so the orbit of the eye is approximately here. So orbit, preorbital, we're talking about this region right here. The preorbital structures in the frontal lobe are involved with executive functioning, but executive functioning that have a lot to do with intention, inhibition, regulation of thought leading to action. Studies in this area where these areas are derogated or purposely in animal studies where they've been lesioned, we see loss of inhibition and animals experience excess in various one format or another. The frontal region of the brain, or the frontal cortex, the very most anterior portion, is the executive functioning, and that has the role of planfulness, abstract thinking, higher cortical functioning. I think in my Okay, just wanted to check. So in summary, let me return for our conclusion from where we started. In summary, when we look at this model to better understand and get a 3D image of the mind, of the brain and mind, we understand this as the dorsal, or the anterior superior portion of the brain, anterior, posterior, superior, inferior, if we're going from top down. And this is the cerebrum, or the cortex, and there's two hemispheres. They're connected by the corpus callosum, which is this tissue between the cingulate and the fornix here, an axonal bridge going perpendicular that holds the two cerebral hemispheres together. At the back of the structure, we have the cerebellum and the brainstem. When we look at this from the top, or the bark of the cortex, we know that we see gyrus and sulci. And in some of our other studies, we know that this has been mapped by researchers, including Dr. Brodmann and others, to regions according to numbers. And we know, for example, that V1 and 2 and 3 right here is the visual cortex, where projections from that dorsal stream go. We also know that this is the cerebral cortex when we view it from the inferior or ventral region, because at the top are the beginning of the stalks of the ophthalmic or olfactory nerve, and the olfactory nerve followed by the rest of the cranial nerves transversing down from anterior to posterior along the ventral region of the brain. Remember, these cranial nerves connect with major nerves that are part of that region directing that function in the body. We talked about key structures from this ventral view, besides the cranial nerves being the medulla and the pons and the rest of the brainstalk. We can see also the cerebral pedicles, or the structures, the axonal bridges that go into the cerebellum, with 2/3 of them going in and 1/3 approximately coming out. When we looked at the middlemost region of the brain after the side cut, we were able to see some of these midbrain structures, the thalamus and hypothalamus, and talking about the cingulate gyrus, the caudate, and from there, not appearing here, but the infundibulum and the pituitary gland. We talked about the way in which the subcortex structures, the putamen, the basal ganglia, substantia nigra, collectively are within this region in the midbrain, and have a strong role in directing and executing and refining motor movements. We talked about the brainstem also from looking at this region again of the medulla and the pons, and the rest of the brainstem being a collection of cabling or axonal connections to various regions along the body from the spinal muscles. So at this point in time, this will conclude our overview sheep brain dissection, and we'll look at another part of this with some of our section on brain disorders and anomalies that we'd expect with some specific tissues in the brain. So we'll stop here at this point in time.